What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Coast to Coast. I am Ronan Gaine. Joining me, as always, Chris Nambu. Thank you so much for making this your favorite podcast for NBA coverage. Remember, you're on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, let us know what you think. You're on Apple Podcasts, you're on Spotify. You leave that 5-star review, you do that. We'll keep producing that content. On today's episode, we're going to be discussing the Minnesota Timberwolves. What moves can they make to turn their season around and put them in a better position for the future moving forward? But before we do that, we're going to get into the fast break. But even before that, Chris, I got to ask, how you doing, brother?
Yeah, just check on me first, man. I'm good, working night shifts here, so just barely awake to get through this. But we gotta jump into some trade stuff. What's been going on out west. I think we said it last time. We haven't touched on the Suns, who have gone a little unnoticed despite everything that's going on. And only thing we can talk about Suns is trade, trade, trade. So I think it'll be good to finally talk about what's been going on the floor for them here. But I'm good. I'm excited. Let's get into it.
Yeah, straight off the bat, last week it was hearing about the Warriors and Steph Curry coming out and basically saying that we have to get to think about the future of the franchise. They shouldn't trade for too many players. They shouldn't mortgage the future to get in guys right now. Draymond echoed that message. And then this week we got LeBron coming out and basically saying, "Oh, we need to play perfect basketball. We need more help." Blah 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 blah. Why don't the Lakers and Warriors just do the NBA a favor, get us all what we want to see? Why don't they just combine their rosters for the rest of the season and then just see what that can make? We finally get to see LeBron and Steph play together. They can be the Los Angeles Warriors. They both can take credit for whatever they do. I think that would be a nice way to just everyone can just shut up about the Lakers and Warriors and they can just maybe make it to the second round of the playoffs. Maybe I don't know.
That's it. That's actually a great question. Like, let's just throw all the CBA nonsense aside, because over the last few years now, this is just a total aside, but like, it's impossible these days to fully understand what trades make sense with all the complexities, the first, second, third, fourth and a half aprons, the over 100,000 rule at the second, all these things that don't make any sense. Why don't, let's just ignore that. Would a team with Steph Curry, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, would that core make it to an NBA Finals?
It's sad that I can't say yes. I really wish I could. It's like absolutely they're there, but I genuinely don't know. I mean, I think they'd still find it tough going up against the Thunder for sure. I don't
That
know
that's
about
actually crazy to say. So if
the
they had a full lineup of Steph Curry, um, take your pick at the two guard, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, take your pick if whether or not you're going Draymond Green or Rui or Kuminga or whoever, and that bench. If you just combine those two rosters and you put them out against the Cavs in a 7 game series or the Thunder in a 7 game series, are you confident that they win that series?
they beat the Cavs, they lose to the Thunder. There's as a go for you. The only reason I have any doubt about the Thunder is just because like there is the idea of like just the maturing. Maybe they're not totally ready yet. That's still in the back of some people's minds. That's the only slight little glimpse that I could give that Lakers Warriors combo. But in terms of talent, like the guys are old. Like LeBron's
That
old,
that's
Steph's
a crazy
old.
litmus test, man.
Like
If you really think about it, I don't think that I've actually sat down and thought about that. The fact that the Thunder, with all this young talent, the fact they've come out over the last, I mean, 2 years really, and how quickly they've excelled beyond the guys that we knew as the best players in the league. We're about to talk about the Suns and good old Kevin Durant. But yeah, I'd agree with that. I don't think that I don't think I'd confidently pick that team, even with the Steph Curry, even with LeBron James. But
we
alas,
should see it. Just the NBA. I think Adam Silver would love to see it. It would make it more exciting. I know people are upset with how boring the league has apparently gotten over the last while. I think people will come back to watch that, but unfortunately, that's just a pipe dream. But moving on from that,
speaking
I
of
just want to
pipe
mention on
dreams,
the Knicks real quick. Just gotta say, I hate the Knicks. Well, I hate how much I love the Knicks because they like that struggle against the Nets the other day. It was great to get that win over the Hawks, but then to struggle like we did against that Nets team, my God, I didn't know the Nets had like the best defense in the NBA, but apparently they do. But we managed to eke out that win. But They're 29-16 right now. They've got the second toughest schedule remaining in the league. So we are really going to see what this Knicks team is made of over the next 2, 3 months heading towards the playoffs. If this Knicks team is a legit, do they make moves? Do they get Mitch back? This is going to be a very interesting period for the New York Knicks.
Yeah, it's gonna be a prove it period. It's interesting, man, that like the Knicks have had, in my mind, a decent season for a team that made a really big trade that's trying to deal with, you know, did they overachieve last season? Was Jalen Brunson really that good? I mean, there's questions about a lot of this and new faces. So I feel like in an adjustment season, despite the talent, the expectations being so big, I think things have gone decently well this season, all things considered. I mean, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, yeah. No,
I feel
I
like
think they
Knicks
have.
fan base are a little ahead of themselves.
Especially that winning run we went on, that was like a good testament of like the fact that there's no more bullshit. Like we that was a run of what was it 9 games in the end or 10 games in the end. They were 10 games we should absolutely be winning and we won them all. Like that was a really good flow that they got into. And like that's what the better teams do. At the end of the day, I know we look at like Boston and we look at the Cavs. Like let's not forget a lot of their wins are going to come against crap teams too. Like that almost a testament of the best teams is they are able to beat the teams that they're supposed to beat. That's a sign of a good team, and that's what the Knicks started to show. Yeah, we've struggled a bit against some of the better teams, and that's where we need the growth. Maybe that's where we need the addition of Mitchell Robinson, or maybe another wing threat. Maybe that's something we can't address by the trade market, but maybe something we can address this summer. This is a long-term project, which is the thing that I think everyone needs to keep remembering about the Knicks.
Yeah, yeah, it is a long-term project. I'll say, um, I'm not surprised at how good their offense has been. They're still the second best offense. Jalen Brunson is still one of the best creators in the league. Karl Anthony Towns, I mean, the way he's just leveled up and he's done more with more is something I don't think a lot of people expected. I'll say that time and time again. That's been one of the pleasant surprises this season that we've seen another level to Karl Anthony Towns' game that we weren't sure was still there. I still can't understand why this Knicks team, with the players they have and Tom Thibodeau, are just dead average in defense. And to your point, against these bad teams, just not shutting them out. I don't get it. I
Yeah.
don't understand how you have OG Anunoby, you have Mikal Bridges, and you have Josh Hart coming off the bench. You have Deuce
No, he's
McBride,
starting. He's starting. He's
or
starting.
and he's starting now. But I don't understand how those lineups don't just stop players from the perimeter. And I know that all of this goes back to, oh, Cat's a bad interior defender. Okay, he's below average for sure. I think some of the metrics will show that. But it doesn't make sense to me that you have two, I would argue, of the top five wing defenders in this league, and you have some decent perimeter guard defenders as well, and you still can't put out I mean, at least close to a top 10 defense. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah. We need to start seeing some more Precious Achua in the lineup when it's him, Towns, Bridges, Brunson, and OG. I think it is. They actually limited minutes now, but they're putting up a decent level on both ends of the floor. So maybe that's an area that we start to see more of. And of course, Mitch coming back can also make that difference. But yeah, next few months are going to be very interesting to watch for the Knicks to see where this team is really at. One team that we know where they're at, but they've kind of got diverted by injuries this year is Dallas Mavericks. Announced yesterday, Derek Lively is going to be out for the next 2 to 3
Yeah,
months,
that's tough.
which is a big blow. He is slowly, I don't want to curse him just yet, but he's starting to look like a bit of a Robert Williams 2.0, which is not something the Mavs need when it comes to the injuries because he's just such a high flyer. He's going to make
Yeah.
those things happen. He's a big dude and he flies around the place, and that's unfortunately what happens. What happens to Mitchell Robinson? So what kind of happens to Robert Williams? These guys that can be so impactful, but how often are they actually on the floor? And then let's look at they're 23 and 21, very much still in the conversation to be automatic in the playoffs, not having to worry about the play-in. Luka's still out. He's going to be reevaluated next week. So potentially he could be back next week. It could be another couple of weeks. It's tough to know when Luka comes back. They have the ninth toughest schedule remaining in the NBA. They're in the Western Conference, which is super stacked. Doesn't help. What do you think? is the mentality of this Mavericks team just try and get healthy by the end of the year and just do what we can, or are they still? Do you think they're still in their own minds thinking we're making a run to the finals again this year?
I can't imagine that they don't. The reason for that is you have Luka Doncic. You have Luka Doncic, and the injury that he has is very recoverable. I don't think they're worried about the rest of the season. I think that the fact that they're over 500, they've gone 4-10 without him. They've had some pretty bad losses against some teams like the Pelicans. Overall, throughout the whole season, they're 10-12 without him. It's not terrible, but they have the guy that can lead you to a finals. And I think that the ball kind of stops there. It's a no doubt argument. But when you have that kind of guy, when you have the guys around him as well, they've been streaky. Be clear on that. Like the shooting has been streaky. Clay will have games here and there where he just can't throw a ball into the ocean. And then he'll also have games where he hits 5 threes in the game. PJ, same thing. It's been tough.
Mhm.
Like there's stretches where he's one week he's shooting 30%, the next week he's shooting over 40. I mean, throughout the whole season, though, they're both shooting 36, 38% respectively. Those guys, I think it's key that they can find some consistency at the end of the season, but it's not a failed project with Clay yet, I don't think. And I mean, the guys that they added in, I think they're still waiting on Najee to hit his stride. The shooting's been a little disappointing, but the activity that you see defensively, I think that's where everything becomes hopeful. The activity
Especially when they're
defensively from
healthy.
him,
Especially when they were healthy,
yes, yeah.
Najee was really having a big impact.
Najee out there and the minutes you get from Grimes, you get a little more speed on the perimeter. And what's been impressive for them, a team that we've not been sure if they could get back to that championship level of defense without any major changes. Um, they've been just outside the top 10 in defensive
Yeah.
rating. And they've done this through reducing their top five and opponents' 3-point rate, top five in opponent 3-point percentage. And you see it on the floor. They're a lot faster on the perimeter with the lineups that they have. They really close out aggressively and they rely on their bigs inside to help defend the paint. Rebounding has not been as dominant as it was last season, perhaps a little bit out of position with the amount of scramble defense that they have. But I
Mm.
think that you can look at this concept and say that they've stabilized that defense that really helped them out last season. They know Luka's coming back, and Kyrie is putting together a really, really good season. I mentioned it last week, but he is bordering 50, 40, 90. The shooting has been incredibly impressive. And when they call his number when it's close game, he's still one of the best performers in the league.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. They're a very interesting team to watch and just see, and like they're kind of almost the definition of a team where like let's see what their roster health is like when we get
Yeah,
to April. That's going to be very interesting to see because whether they're able to edge up into the top six, whether they're in the play-in, you kind of believe that they'll be able to make it out of the play-in,
yeah,
even though it
I
will
believe
be
that.
tough. But it's they're definitely an interesting team to keep an eye on. That's unfortunately we're still kind of waiting to see that ultimate regular season year for this Mavericks team, this ultimate regular season year from Luka Doncic. It's not going to be this year, but maybe it can still be productive come the postseason. All
I'll say
right,
on
let's
on,
shift.
on
Oh,
Lively real quick though. You may look at his counting stats and doesn't jump off the page as much as you'd want it to. But when you watch the games, he's still progressing in the ways that you want him to.
yeah,
The way that he's still playmaking from the middle of the floor, the way he's still such an elite vertical threat, the way he is just swallowing shots inside. He's the best in overall impact metrics on this team. Mavs are 12 points better per 100 possessions with him on the floor, about 1 point worse with him off, plus 13 for this team. And that is, I believe it's better than Luca's on off differential as well. He's by far one of the biggest X factors for this team. So him being healthy, above all else, I mean, if they can bring him back healthy by the end of the season, him and Gafford, we've seen how impactful, how devastating that can be to other teams to have that, double rim attacking threat, the playmaking you get from them. I still have faith in this team. Just to end on how I think Derek Lively, even though he's injury prone, he is I think the key to this team actually being a big threat.
yeah, I totally agree. They need the 1-2 punch. I think we'll see probably the much less of an impact from Gafford now that he's going to have to play play some more minutes will notice that they're a 1-2 punch. They need
Yeah.
they need each other. What about the Phoenix Suns? You still got faith in them?
Let's let's talk about it, man. I feel like they've been just good enough this season to avoid like the total hellfire that the Bucks got at the beginning of the season. They've done decent against the bad teams, right? Um, they're hovering just outside the top 10 in offensive rating. Booker has made a little bit of resurgence since his really poor start. Um,
And Beal going to the bench.
and Beal going to the bench, it's nice, 17 points per game. Okay, not terrible. Things are going decently. Um, let's talk about some of the wins they've had, though. I don't think it's any cause for optimism. They've won against Philly, and Philly's again has very often been one of the worst teams in the league.
Philly is Philly.
Yeah. They've won against Atlanta, Utah, Charlotte, Washington, Detroit, Brooklyn. 7-4 to start the year. Okay, fine. Are we celebrating? Maybe not. Um, then we got the Nick Richards. Debut, 20-point double-double. I will say he was plus 22, grabbed 4 offensive rebounds. That's exactly what we wanted, winning 50-50 balls. And then he goes 4-4 against Cleveland without Mobley. Got out rebounded by Tristan Thompson, who I didn't even know if he could still play basketball. 8-15 against Brooklyn. That was nice. For the Nick Richards experience, I feel like it's gonna be night to night. I don't think it's gonna be every single night. I think he'll be situationally really good when they need him. All that to say, for a team that still has championship aspirations, they have gone under the radar for how bad compared to those expectations have been. And let's talk about what their plan is right now, because that's where this gets interesting. So the Stepien rule, which we have from former GM of the Cleveland Cavaliers, who traded all their picks. We have that. We can't trade picks on multiple years. That's why we have pick swaps, etc. They found a way to circumnavigate the Stepien rule by trading their 2031 unprotected pick for three just straight up awful first round picks. Awful. So what it is, it's a 25, 27, and 29 first round pick from a combination of, I believe it's Cleveland, Minnesota, and Utah. You get the worst of those picks, assuming probably will be Cleveland. So the way that actually I love how John Hollinger put this, traded their dollar for 3 quarters. I'd go a step further to say 3 dimes. If we're thinking Cleveland is on the trajectory that they're on, I mean you're looking at best picks in the 20s, at worst picks in the high 20s. So this is where we start with the Suns. They're in this precarious position in the future and right now. Durant's 36, looking a little bit 36, at least defensively. Booker looks overwhelmed again with the playmaking and is shooting almost a career low in 3-point percentage. They're not in a position, I think, where they have an obvious answer to win a championship with one move. But let's talk about it. What do you do with these 3 picks? What's going to happen next? Is it worth it? They've just
Yeah.
mortgaged the future. So now you've got to do it.
Their
You've got
future's
to make a
dead. They
move.
have to just do. They have to go all in. They have to do. If they can find a way to get Jimmy Butler to Phoenix that doesn't involve losing Kevin Durant or Devin Booker, they just have to do it. Like they're dead. Like their future doesn't exist. They're not like the Warriors who are like we got to protect the future. Their future is gone. So they're committed.
Yeah.
They got it. They're in. They're in. There's no way of backing out. They gotta go and try and do it.
It's Yeah, so at this point, they've pushed the sled over the hill. You're going down. There's no going back. Can't get off. Train's left station. So you got to decide the destination. And you can look up and down the league, players for sale. Your Zach Levines, your Brandon Ingrams, and of course your Jimmy Butler. I don't think that in the echelon of player that you expect to push you over the top, there's anyone besides Jimmy Butler. I think the conversation stops there, right? It doesn't go any deeper than that. So let's talk about it. Simple question. This is what this whole season boils down to, because there's no future to discuss. It's already happened. That there's no debating whether they should or shouldn't. They've made the decision. There's not really any option to make. Does Jimmy Butler change their fortunes and turn them into a contender?
No. but they have to do it. I don't think they're going to win the title if they trade for Jimmy Butler. Can
Do
he
they have
get
a
out of the first?
chance? Not like not better. Do they have a puncher's chance?
Yes. So like even whatever my thoughts on it, like they have to do it. I just keep saying like they have to make this trade, whatever it has to be done. Does it like the rumor mill is like Beal ended up in Milwaukee through this or whatever the way they have to work it to try and make it work. Do they give two of those picks that they got and then Milwaukee give one of their first round picks to the Miami Heat? Is that enough to subside them? I'm not sure. I guess it kind of the Heat. Do the Heat hold all the cards? It's really tough to know who has the power in this sort of maneuver. I don't really know who has the power. It kind of feels like they could all really do with this move happening, and no one really has any power to over how it actually plays out.
Yeah, I think that the the power dynamic is really interesting. Like this is a players' league, but I mean Jimmy Butler, I think holds the power here, but so does Beal. Beal's the one with the no trade clause.
Yeah,
Does he agree to leave?
this is
How
the
does
definitely this is like the definition of player power. This whole situation, right?
yeah. I mean, here's the thing. You would assume that if that deal, we've established that that's the only deal that is worth mortgaging your future for in this very specific season slash context. You'd assume that they had a deal in place and they're just trying to sort things out to make this work.
I would guess
Beal
so.
has already said yes, as long as X happens. Butler has already said yes, as long as I get my extension. Milwaukee's already agreed. Miami's already agreed. It's just finalizing maybe pick compensation and which salary filler is going where, that sort of thing. You'd assume that, right?
Yeah.
Let's not forget this is also the front office that has blundered through multiple failed deals in the past. We won't chronicle them all here, but they are infamous for. I mean, same with the Bucks too. You're dealing with the Bucks and the Suns, two organizations who have made clerical errors that had led to failed trades and offseason moves that you just don't see from most organizations, which hopefully they've learned from and they've doubled their efforts and won't happen here. But I mean, there's a non-0% chance that, in a few days it's like, oh, we can't actually do this. And then what? So let's assume that doesn't happen, but I'm saying that that's something I'm panicking about as if I'm a Suns fan. But let's talk about the basketball potential though. I first want to start with Booker, who I think we've seen this time and time again. It's pretty simple. He can be a very good playmaker. He's approaching his career highs in assist rate. But what we see every single time is his perimeter shooting always suffers as a result. With more usage, with more playmaking responsibilities on ball, his shooting from the perimeter suffers. His best season was with Chris Paul in that championship run that they had when he could play more off ball and he could light it up with Chris Paul running set plays, him being the primary option. And he was just unbeatable at times. I mean, one of the best scorers in the league. Still is. But with that, him being an off-ball threat like that, it was tough to face. It's a little different now. So if you add in point Jimmy Butler and you're allowed to put Booker off the ball, how much better do you get? Not just because you have Butler there, but how much better do you get because you have Booker moving a little bit more off ball? And then we think about that. Well, what's another thing that the Suns need? They are bottom of the league in interior offense. They're not getting any feet in the paint. They don't have wings really to get in the paint and score. Jimmy Butler is a guy who's physical. He's going to attack switches. He's going to get in the paint, and he's going to be able to get offense that way. That's a huge need that they have. You're fulfilling an important need that they have in terms of attacking the paint. You're fulfilling an important need that they have in terms of getting Booker off the ball. And how much does that trickle down? Offensively, I think that could have a huge impact.
Yeah, you just kind of wonder, like, is Jimmy Butler, like, he obviously believes that he still has some of his best years ahead of him. His performance this year doesn't tell you that, but that's also him probably saying, clearly making it clear that he doesn't want to be in Miami anymore. And that's probably is that how much of an impact is that having on the way he's performing? The Miami Heat obviously think it's a lot with the suspensions, and of course getting suspended again now for missing a
Yeah.
flight,
Too
which is like this is just turning into
insubordinate
like
behavior.
this is just turning into like one of the ugliest breakups that we've seen in the NBA. And like I guess it's not really deterring any teams from wanting to deal with wanting to deal with Jimmy Butler, which is a little bit of a surprise. But yeah, I mean, it feels like the Suns' place to play. That's the place he wants to go, and I think it's more so because the Suns don't have any other options. The Suns just have to do this, whether it works or not. They got to try. There's no wait and see. Oh, well, maybe we'll do this instead. No, no, no. You got to just go and do this. And your big three failed before with Bradley Beal as part of it. Can it be more successful with Jimmy Butler as part of it? I don't know, but we got to see it happen.
Yeah, and I think the reason I bring all this up in terms of the offense, like not that I would do it. Like if you handed me the keys in like rewinded a week, I would not have traded those picks. I would not have jettisoned your future for Jimmy Butler for a small hope. But I think it's although it's a small hope, how many teams have a small hope to begin with? You know?
Yeah.
Like how many teams besides your Celtics, besides your Thunder, besides your Cavs? I mean, the Cavs just kind of found themselves here in this true contender position from last year. I mean, last year no one's talking about them being contenders. So things change very quickly in the NBA, and just giving yourself a chance, I think
Yeah.
it makes sense that's
I,
true.
I'll say, like, if they were to make this move, I'd give them more of a shot than the Lakers, the Clippers, probably the Rockets. Who else have we got there in that conversation? Maybe the Timberwolves too. Like I think that like it's them the Suns would be the next one up after probably Dallas, OKC, Memphis, and Denver. I think if they make this move, the Suns are probably the next one up there, in my opinion, this season.
Yeah. No, I do I agree with that. I think if you're just thinking about firepower, you think about how this roster gets more balanced out. And is that X factor there? Is the Jimmy Butler playoff effect still there? Because I think that's also, the intangible that you have to think about
That's the
is
ultimate. That's the ultimate. If that is still there, like that's the ultimate. Like that. Oh, now we really got to make that. Obviously, there's no way of predicting that. There's no way to know. You just got to make the
yeah.
move and really hope. But yeah, the interesting situation. But they gotta do something because they're what 22 and 21 now. They're 10th, right around there. They're right in the battle with everyone: Warriors, Spurs, Dallas, Wolves, Kings, Clippers, Lakers. Next 8 games, right? Wizards, Clippers, Wolves, Warriors, Blazers twice, Thunder, and Jazz. I'm really thinking they gotta go 6-2 in those games. They gotta. This is the time where they have to beef up their win total because then in their final 31 games, let's just go. I just lay this out to you. Toughest schedule in the NBA: Nuggets twice, Grizzlies 3 times, Rockets 3 times, Wolves twice, Kings twice, Mavs, Knicks, Bucks twice, Cavaliers, Celtics twice, Thunder, Clippers, Lakers, Spurs twice, and the Warriors. That's 25 of their last 31 games. Like that is an absolute gauntlet.
Yeah. Do you know what their record was against 500 teams?
Probably like four below or something, is it?
They
Worse.
are pulling it up here. They are 10 and 17 against 500 teams.
And
They
were two of
need
those
Jimmy
wins against
Butler.
the Lakers. I think two of those are the Lakers
Yeah.
too.
Um, and my last point on it, you mentioned the strength of schedule, and you have a hungry Jimmy Butler who wants to get on a different team and prove himself somewhere else. How much more of a reason to make the move? And the offense is gonna get better. And I'll leave you with this tantalizing thought. You go out and you get um Bud. I mean Frank Vogel. I mean he himself is a defensive coach, but Budenholzer we know that he's a defensive coach as well. And you give him Nick Richards, a big that you can play the drop, a big that can defend the paint. Then you give him Jimmy Butler. You combine Jimmy Butler with Ryan Dunn. You have two really strong point of attack defenders on the perimeter. Not to mention done as a weak side help defender when you need him to guard fours. We've seen Booker engaged when he can be an elite on-ball defender as well. And you could really kind of relax things up for Durant to be a situational weak side rim protector. I mean, those four guys, that core four of defense, that's playoff defense. I can believe in that starting lineup being a starting lineup that can play playoff level defense and can be an elite defense. And that's not something that I think you could say without Jimmy Butler there. And for them to vault from being a bottom 10 defense into something that's
24th.
yeah, that's something that they could hang their hat on that they haven't been able to do all season. And how much of that stems from, not just on the defensive end, but getting more efficient on offense. I think maybe that's the hope, right? It's not just, hey, this is just Jimmy Butler. It's gonna do better in the offense, but maybe he's that X factor in making everyone else's roles make a little bit more sense. Ryan Dunn doesn't have super responsibilities to defend the best player every single night. He has a running mate next to him defensively. Durant's not just constantly relied upon to be the only rim help. He's got Nick Richards there now. Maybe these little things and Jimmy Butler, that's what they needed to make this run because they got to make the run. Like you said, they made the trade. I think that there is a sliver of hope that they can turn this thing around and make the most out of what is their last chance at a championship, probably for a decade.
Yeah, yeah. I think one thing I think I can confidently say I think we're going to get the chance to see it. I do believe that this trade is going to happen, so we are going to get the chance to see that. And obviously, we need some excitement. Everyone's waiting for it in work. Bleacher Report, they're primed and ready for this Jimmy Butler to finally this case to finally be over. I can't wait for it to finally be over because every time there's streams and stuff going on, it's always, oh, where's Jimmy going? What's happening with Jimmy? It's like, I'm getting sick of it. I want him to just go somewhere already, and let's just see where it goes from there. But let's get to the title of the podcast: the Minnesota Timberwolves, another team down in the plane right now, another team that made an ill-advised trade for basketball reasons, but they did it for money reasons, as we all know. They are now 23 and 21. They have the 21st. They rank 21st in remaining schedule, which is by far the easiest of any of the teams above or below them in the Western Conference standings. Good sign for them. But as this roster currently constructed, is it good enough to go on a run to avoid the play-in right now, do you think?
Yes and no. It's the worst answer. I think that the answer has to be no because what we thought in the beginning of the season is that it would take time for things to gel, for the dust to settle, for us to see how Julius Randle worked on this team. Um, and I think we just we know. We know what it looks like. We know that they're not better when he's on the floor. We know that the defense suffers a bit as well, and that things just get clogged up. There's no movement. We know that Anthony Edwards just has less space to work with, and DiVincenzo now being out indefinitely, Conley being a shell of himself, and Dillingham still being too young to be a really viable threat at the end of the season. It's not going to be their year. It's just
Mhm.
not, and I think that we're going to search for trades to make things work this season. But what the front office did was take a long view, and they made the wrong choice. Not in terms of their vision, but in terms of the trade. They traded off Cat for a shorter term contract, Julius Randle, and it was going to be like let's just see what happens. I don't think that there was a true expectation from the front office that this was the roster that would be the one to take them to a championship. But I think they feared the implications of holding on to what they had, knowing that Anthony Edwards is going to be that guy for the foreseeable future. I don't think this is it. And I think they know it's not it. And that makes me hesitate to think that they're going to make serious changes at this deadline that would hamper them in the future.
It's just kind of wild. They're like way more all in than you would think. Like they have only got two first round picks right now. They've got their one in 2028, and they've got that one they got for the from the Knicks, the Pistons pick next season. Like it feels like they haven't made that many moves to be that devoid of draft capital. But I guess obviously the Gobert trade that obviously kicked up a lot of it, and then like it's just it feels like they should be closer. But you gotta we also have to remember like Anthony Edwards is young. I know Anthony Edwards wants to play with better guys, and he's ready to go for that championship now. But I think they're kind of accepting, and like we said this before, like they have to just make sure they're doing enough to show Anthony Edwards that they're heading in the right direction and things are going in the right way, so he doesn't get too disgruntled and maybe go full Jimmy Butler on them. So that like that's like something they have to still keep in mind. They have to show they're kind of making moves and trying to look in the right direction, and that's going to start. That's going to start with a few trades. I think we both have a couple of trades that we are thinking about for the Minnesota Timberwolves. One thing I will just say, if they are going to stand pat, one thing that has to change: Julius Randle, 33% from deep. McDaniels, 32.5% from deep. Mike Conley, 38% from deep. Those numbers got to shoot up. If they're going to stand pat and have all these guys still on the roster, those numbers got to shoot up because Mike Conley can no longer get to the rim. So he kind of has to be shooting well from deep. Randall's got to shoot better. McDaniels absolutely has to shoot better. That's one thing I will say before we get into the trades. That's a thing that needs to start shooting up if they're going to stand pat.
That's been the number one thing I think that has been a disappointment for this season, aside from Julius Randle. I think Julius Randle just absorbs all the negativity for what's
Oh, yeah.
happened, and no, frankly, it's I'll be honest. I'll talk about how bad it has looked on the floor, but let's be real. Like he's still better than all those guys on court differential.
Mm.
Like they're better on the court with Julius Randle on it because when you switch him out for uh and anyone else, I mean Naz Reid's not had a good season either. No one on this team has had a great season. And maybe that's just a testament to how much of a connecting piece Cat was, but let's be real, those guys have also severely underperformed. And Julius Randle is really he's kind of
I, I think it's
punching
more
bag for all of
it
it.
kind of feels like he's becoming a bit of a an issue in the locker room. Maybe not the best guy to be having around in the locker room. That kind of seems like an issue that's flaring up. And I know that's something we kind of only hear about when things are going badly. Maybe if the Wolves were like 26 and 21 now instead of where they're at, which is 23 and 21, maybe we wouldn't be hearing so much about that. But I think that's kind of an area as well where he's getting more of the sacks. He's kind of becoming a bit more of a problem around the locker room compared to like obviously Cat. He seems to be a been a great fit in New York and was obviously a good fit beforehand too.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's a lot of speculation about the locker room stuff, but um let's let's see. Where do you have Julius Randle going? I suspect none of these trades that we have will be good or sensible trades because people who are paid to do this also can't figure anything out. So let's let's see what we got.
Yeah, I'll show out the one that I least like. I think it's the least likely, but it's something that might be possible maybe. A trade between the Charlotte Hornets and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Straight up swap. Julius Randle for Miles Bridges.
I huh, that I
I
don't
try I tried to work it to try and get Josh Green involved in that as well, but it was very tough to figure out with the money. So I just did a straight up swap between Randall and Bridges. My thinking being pretty similar players across the board, especially this season stats wise. Bridges maybe just a bit more of a bit more accepting of his role. He's on a pretty decent
yeah.
contract and a bit more of accepting as being a role guy. That was my thinking there.
That's so the tough thing with Miles Bridges this season has been the shooting.
Mhm.
Um we saw him take a bit of a step forward last season after he had a career year 2021 shooting 40%, took a dip, came back up a little bit shooting 35%, expected him maybe to get better with more volume, with more touches, and has really disappointed shooting 31% from perimeter. And the number one thing to unlocking Edwards is the shooting. So you'd want to see them get shooting in there. So I don't think it checks that box off
Shooters
in
do
terms
get
of
better
long.
when they leave Charlotte. Remember PJ Washington?
This is true. This is true. But having off-ball guys, that probably matters more. I mean, Bridges is a guy. that you can have in the corners. I mean, he's not been effective shooting from there, but in terms of being a slasher, cutter, he's a guy that you can get into pick and roll with. I think that it frankly doesn't make the Wolves better. And I think that it's an admirable shot. I think he fits in a little bit better as you don't have to feed him the ball. There's not going to be a concern that, hey, like he's not happy, he's not getting the ball. It's like, well, you're a role player. Randall is in that position where he's better than him, so he should get it, but maybe it doesn't make sense unless there's a pick involved. If there's a pick involved, then maybe we're talking something. But
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, that might
Oh,
be the way they might have to incentivize Charlotte to make that happen. I think Charlotte could like know that they're getting off like the long-term contract of Bridges, even though they just gave that to him.
yeah.
But I think they would be fairly confident knowing that Randall is not going to pick up his player option if he's going to be in Charlotte. I think that's something that they could probably almost bank on. Maybe I'm being stupid there and thinking Randall's going to get his money and not care about anything else. Maybe that is true, but I think they could almost bank on this being a guy that's not on their roster after this season.
What's the next one you got?
Okay, let's get a bit more interesting now. We got to go for the guy that I've been putting on every team in the NBA, Cam Johnson landing with the Minnesota Timberwolves. So the Minnesota
Yeah.
Timberwolves get Cam Johnson and Whitehead. The Brooklyn Nets get Julius Randle, the Wolves' 2028 first rounder, and the Pistons get Maxwell Lewis. They come in just to make the money work.
Hmm. I mean, any trade getting you Cam Johnson. I mean, what's the pick compensation?
Yeah, that's the thing. I only had the 2028 first, but they probably have to throw in the 2025 one from the Pistons too.
That's any trade that's getting Cam Johnson to the Wolves is the one. That's the one that checks the boxes, I think, the most and isn't as painful from a total teardown perspective. Um, and I think the Nets are going to take really any picks, and I think that it depends what you think about the Wolves long term. Do you think that they're going to go into a rebuild mode? Is Ant going to be a guy? Is there a 50-50 chance, like you said? Is he going to be a guy that maybe he doesn't want to be there anymore? Is his front office going to figure it out? I mean, that's why people are preying on the Suns. Are they going to become the next Suns, the way that they operate? Um, I do like that. I do like that. And it's hard not to like a lot of Cam Johnson trades. It's funny because he just fits everywhere. He's having a career year, scoring almost 20 points per game on great efficiency. He can play incredibly well off the ball. He has the size to fit into this defense, and can't complain with that one. That is a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I was trying hard to make it work with that. It's just like, are the Nets willing to? I mean, Randall would be the worst guy for the Nets to pick up. I mean, not going to make them win too many games this year. Maybe
And
next
he's
year.
fun.
He acts as like the bandage guy when like maybe hopefully I guess they're hoping Cooper Flag is rookie and Randall could take some of the pressure off him along with D'Lo to kind of keep them kind of almost slightly competitive without having to rely on Flag being like the greatest rookie of all time, which is like obviously their hope or whoever they end up getting. They're hoping to have a top three pick. So it might not be the worst thing in the world for the Brooklyn Nets either, getting a guy like Julius Randle.
I 100% agree with that. And this is this is literally no slight to Randall. I do believe he's a good player. I do like him in the right context, but him and D'Lo don't guarantee you a great season, but they do guarantee you fun
Some fun.
basketball.
They do. That'd be fun.
Them and Cam Thomas,
Yeah,
and then whoever your rookie is. I mean that's some good tanking basketball. That's almost perfect tanking basketball.
absolutely.
I'll take it.
And
I'll
some
take it.
fun
I
wins
like
on the
that one.
side as well.
That
Yeah.
might actually be the favorite one I've seen.
Yeah, that's the best one. It's just yeah, I guess who can offer a better package. That's the only thing. I think that Cam Johnson's he's a hot commodity. Okay, we'll get to my last one then before we get. I think you only had one. We'll get to my last one here. It's a three-team trade involving the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Utah Jazz, and the Detroit Pistons again because the Pistons are just nice for making money work. So the Detroit Pistons receive Julius Randle, Juzang, and their first rounder back. The Jazz get Tim Hardaway Jr. and Mike Conley and the Wolves' 2028 first round pick. And the Wolves get Colin Sexton, Simone Fontecchio, and Sensabaugh. A few guys in there just to fill the money, but the big ticket items: Sexton and Fontecchio to the Wolves. Jazz get Hardaway Jr. and
Hmm.
Mike Conley, and the Pistons get Randall and Juzang and their first rounder back.
That's so the Pistons end up losing Tim Hardaway Jr., who in terms of locker room, talk about locker room guy. I mean, he's been fantastic with that locker room. In terms of shooting, has been, I mean, better than anything they've had in the last 5 years. That's a tough one, but getting their first round pick back, what year?
It's next year.
I can't.
It's 2025. I
And it's
think I think they
owned
can.
by,
It's owned by the Wolves. The Wolves got it from the Knicks.
yeah, that's a big one. Is Tim Hard the question is Tim Hardaway Jr. worth your own first round pick, given that you're probably going to be picking in the mid-teens in a very good draft. At worst, low 20s. That's tough. That's tough. Tim Hardaway Jr. has done great things for them. I think the worry for this team is they're finally looking like a good basketball team. They're a 500 basketball team for a team that was just god awful last year. The vibes are good. They're making moves, and to kill that vibe with a trade to get Randall in, a guy who's just been bounced around. I mean, Randall's not going to be happy. You can't expect him to be a happy camper after he gets jettisoned to another team. I mean, that's going to be a terrible situation for anybody. Is that worth your first round pick? You already got a lot of talent. I think Detroit says thanks, but no thanks. That's really close, but it depends how much they value it. Depends if they have their
Yeah.
eyes on a few guys in the draft where it's like, hey, we need to add that talent. That's potential. Um, and Colin Sexton, I mean, his right. He's had a good year. And all things are going unnoticed in Utah, obviously, because they're a tanking team. But I mean, scoring 18 points per game, shooting 50% from the floor. And the tough thing that he hasn't done in years past is shoot well from three. But hey, the last 3 years he's done it, shooting over 40% from three this season. And he's not the playmaker that you had in Conley. You're never going to replace that, I don't think, with anyone on the roster right now. But in terms of having another scorer, a guy who's going to take pressure off of Ant when it matters, and to have that same competitive spirit, I think he would be a great running mate with Anthony Edwards. I don't hate that, to be honest.
And he can come off the bench or start. Like we could work both ways. Whether they want
Yeah,
DiVincenzo to be the starter moving forward, or they could have him. They could switch both
yeah,
ways. He can actually get to the rim still, which is a big plus as well.
yeah. That is a huge thing. Having someone else who can actually get 2 feet in the paint and to get their offense moving, get open looks for other guys. I mean, Conley has just been unable to do that. Um, that's not terrible. I mean, it's not better than the Cam Johnson trade, but it is interesting, like just to work through that in the GM's mind, like for Detroit, like, hey, your
Yeah.
season's going well, but do you want your first round pick back?
And like yeah, like I said before, like Tim Hardaway Jr. is not there for the long term.
Yeah,
I
I
know
mean, they
I
could
know the
pull an Al
vibes are good
Horford.
this year, but
They could just waive him. It'll cost them. Well, no, you have to have waive and stretch him, but like, I actually know with the new CBA, you have to play. You can't just pull an Al Horford, send him home. Um, but that's interesting. Got me thinking. Probably it's too much thinking and too much risk, I think, for all teams involved to do it. But it's close. That's a
so
close one.
let's rank them. What do you think? What do you think if you're ranking those trades? We go Cam Johnson, Bridges, then the Sexton one. What are you thinking?
I would say Bridges at the bottom. Bridges doesn't do anything much for other team. I think Cam Johnson definitely, that's like a tier A. That's tier A trade. And solid tier B. If Pistons really want their pick back, I mean, Utah's happy to take trades for any picks anywhere.
Mhm.
If Detroit wants their pick back and you just need some juice, that's a pretty good return. I think that's a better return than Bridges. And those will rank. I'm curious where you rank this. So I'll give you mine and tell me where you put it. Um, there's two. One I stole from one of your colleagues at Bleacher Report because it was too good to pass up. It's complicated, and I don't think it would happen because it's so complicated. But these three team trades that you need to just dive into the CBA Bible to figure out. Um, Timberwolves get Lonzo Ball from the Bulls, Buddy Hield from the Warriors. Julian Phillips from the Bulls. The Bulls get Julius Randle from the Wolves, Kuminga from the Warriors, Kevon Looney. This is crazy. Kevon Looney from the Warriors, Kyle Anderson from the Warriors, Gary Payton from the Warriors, Luka Garza from the Timberwolves, and the Warriors get Vooch, Patrick Williams, their forward of the future, Torrey Craig, Taylor Horton Tucker. There's too much going on there. But
So much.
let's just talk about it from the
That would have to be
Timberwolves.
the biggest trade of all time. Do you know what
That's
I
a
saw
lot of
though?
baggage, man.
I saw that trade, and the Bulls
Yeah.
would get a 20 million trade extension for Vooch.
Yes, that's probably the on top of getting Kuminga, um, interesting upgrade from Williams. Timberwolves getting Lonzo Ball and Buddy Hield is the reason I brought it up. I think from the Warriors' perspective, I think they say no for sure. Why are they getting off of these guys for Patrick Williams and Vooch? I mean, Vooch is expiring. You can work
They
off
have
him
liked
more.
Vooch, to be fair. The Wolves, the Warriors have been linked to them, I guess.
Yeah.
And was there picks involved in that at all?
No.
Yeah,
No
so
one's getting picks out.
I think any moves that the Warriors can make that don't involve trading picks, I think they could get down with. But also, like that trade, like gets rid of like half the roster.
I mean, having a stretch big who can play in the pick and roll and be a, elbow DHO option for Steph Curry, I think he'd fit beautifully for the Warriors. And you can really start to take some pressure off of Draymond to be a playmaker and just maybe you allow Steph Curry to do more pick and roll stuff. But I mean, staying on the perspective of the Timberwolves, I had two Bulls in these trades. That's why I pulled this one out just from the thought of how valuable is Lonzo Ball and what we've seen from him in limited minutes. Like it's been small sample size, but there's been no setbacks health wise. When he's on the court, he looks just fantastic. He does, but in such small spurts.
Small margins. His shot still looks awful, but obviously he hasn't played he's played what, like 20 games in like 3 years. So I mean, fair enough.
If there is a thought that he is healthy, and you believe that, and he's working his way back to what he was, I mean, it's a shot in the dark. But if you're talking about long-term team building, like getting the point guard of your future, a defensive guard that's going to be off ball, three-point shooter, really get you going in the fast break, just a elite top of tier connector. That's the guy you need next to Anthony Edwards.
Absolutely. If that was like, if you could look into your crystal ball and see into the future and see Lonzo Ball, he's going to play 65 games every year over the next 5 years. He's going to be healthy for the
He's
playoffs.
not gonna
You're
play
like, you're
65 games.
slamming that. You're slamming that and saying, yes, please. Thank you. I will take that. He's the perfect replacement for a guy like Mike Conley. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, the most likely outcome is that he's just not going to be healthy. And it's just too big of a risk.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, I want to say if you look at the medicine behind it, I mean, you kind of look at it like he has a fresh start. It's not just a traditional repaired meniscus. It's a transplanted meniscus. So for all intents and purposes, the issue that has plagued him, that meniscus, that knee, is technically brand new. You got a new clock on it. Maybe this is like his rookie his rookie season, you could say. But the minutes you've seen from him, yes, the shot is not there yet, but the defense is there. The speed is there. I mean, dude is catching lobs. He's dunking. That's something you see. Can he run? Can he jump? Can he dunk? Can he defend? Answer to all that is yes. Is the shot there yet? No. We saw him get to an elite level of shooting in his last healthy season. I mean, if you think of him getting back to a 7 attempts per game, shooting over 40% from three, with the amount of playmaking and defense that you get out of him, I mean that's tantalizing, and you'll get him for cheap. He's going to be a guy that will sign for a long period for cheap money.
Yeah, that's I'm kind of thinking, do they do that now or do they try and lure him there in the summer? He doesn't have an option or anything. He's expiring, right?
No, yeah, it's expiring. Yeah, so that's
Like,
another piece of
and
it.
we know like the hole that the Bulls are in, so maybe it's an idea. I mean, on one hand, he probably wants to do right by the Bulls after they invested in him, and he hasn't been able to live up to it. But on the other hand, they're kind of in a team that need to blow it up and move on. So maybe the Wolves could look to get him this offseason and not like risk any capital right now. It's a tough one.
Yeah, a move that gets him Buddy Hield, Lonzo Ball is an interesting one for this season, but also the future. Um, I had a potentially terrible trade. This is the last one. I'd say, where would you rank getting Lonzo? That's a huge shot in the dark. A lot of moving
I gotta rank
parts.
it third because of the question marks around his health. It
Yeah.
has to be third.
Um, Staying on the Bulls, a trade that is almost complete requires another team in terms of like very minimal salary to move around. The structure of this trade is Zach LaVine for Julius Randle and Mike Conley. You insert Rob Dillingham into the starting lineup. You have Zach LaVine out there playing the combo guard spot, and you give for the next 3 years, you give Anthony Edwards arguably the best off guard in the league right now, the best off guard scorer in the league. And if you want to get that debate, we can. Name better off ball shooters, better 3 level scorers at Zach LaVine's position offensively. Oh wait, there's not a lot.
He's doing his best to make himself look like a worthy trade spot. But like yeah, that the only thing with that move is it's not quite the same level, but it kind of shows the Wolves right back in the financial hole that they were in before.
Yeah. And I think so what's the major issue with the Wolves? Their defense is starting to get back to where it was, but they're not getting there's no true secondary playmaker from the perimeter. There's not enough perimeter shooting. There aren't guys who are generating free throws, and there's no high volume 3-point shooters. And Zach LaVine checks offensively all those boxes. And he's a guy that is not going to demand, he's going to fit into that offense perfectly. He's going to be able to play off of it. Had his best season this year being an off-ball shooter, off-ball cutter. I mean, the amount of gravity that Anthony Edwards has, and you give those lanes to a slasher like Zach LaVine, and you have 2 high-flying guards like that for the next 3 years. I mean, I think that the the mistake that we learned from is relying too much, I think, on inconsistent depth. Was Naz Reid really going to develop into something else? Was Jaden McDaniels really going to take the next step forward? If not, what are you doing? What are you doing with Anthony Edwards? What's your plan? How are you going to unlock him? If you're going to spend time trying to develop these other guys to unlock Anthony Edwards, then if there's a guy out there right now, I think you learned your mistake by getting off of Cat, a guy who clearly made Anthony Edwards better, and now Anthony Edwards is having a tough year. You got to find someone else to kind of fit that equation and make him the player he's supposed to be.
I quietly love that move, and I'd love to see Levine back with Minnesota. It'll be like when D'Lo returned to LA, but I just think it'd be way better.
Yeah, don't invoke
And
that. Don't invoke that.
I think it would be way better. I would really love to see that, and that would be kind of bringing back a bit of the star power that they lost with Cat, but also, like you said, not so much of a guy that's going to take away from Anthony Edwards in the wrong way, and not so much of a guy that's going to be difficult to fit in. I really like that, and I think again that takes a bit more of the pressure off of a guy like a McDaniels, and you can just be like, yeah, just be that elite defensive stopper that we need you to be because they're going to need him to be that. If it's realistically the starting lineup would probably be Levine, Edwards, McDaniels, probably like Nas Reed and Gobert or something along those lines, rather than straight away throwing Dillingham in there. So you would need McDaniels to really be red hot defensively. So yeah, I mean, I like it. It would be crazy if the Wolves actually did it because they made this move financially to get rid of Towns and then to like throw themselves right back into the hole, realize it was such a mistake and just throw themselves right back into the hole. I'd almost respect it. It would be them acknowledging we made a mistake here. So we're gonna go back to having good players and paying the money.
Yeah, it's a fine balance to walk, and it's tough to make such long-term decisions off of a few months of data, but I think it's enough time of really distasteful vibes in Minnesota, and you don't want to prolong that with your star the way that the league has been.
I think that's number two. I think Cam Johnson's the number one, and I think that Levine trade would be number two. That's how I would rank them.
It'd be fun. Can you imagine? Can you imagine like the amount of high flying dunks, that the shot making both those guys have, and the fact that Levine's going back to Minnesota and seeing him in a playoff environment, you know, you can't put two on the ball on Edwards when you got Levine on the other side, and I think that would be fun. That would be fun. Obviously, a lot of people are going to say, "Well, what about the defense? What about Zach Levine's been a good on-ball defender. You got Rudy Gobert back there. He's the best.
Rudy
You
Gobert's a
know,
top 10 defense by himself. He just makes them a
yeah."
top 10 defense. That's the fact.
So I
Yeah.
would like that.
Man, it'd be a lot of fun. The Wolves need to do something, whether it's now or in the summer. They got to do something. They got to stop trying to be too smart and saying, "Oh, we're going to do this on the cheap." You don't win on the cheap. You got to spend money to. You got to invest money in order to win. I guess we're still seeing how big of an impact all the issues with their ownership is having, whether they're going to make these moves or not. They want to get below the second apron, all that sort of stuff. But if you want to compete and if you want to keep your potential next face of the NBA, Anthony Edwards, happy, you're going to have to invest.
Yeah. Any before we end, any other trade, any one of the players you want to see moved? Anything else on the horizon?
I mean, nothing. Nothing's really come to mind. There's nothing that I'm like, yeah, that like I definitely want to see that happen. Like I'd love to be like, yeah, I want to see Walker Kessler playing for the Lakers, but at the same time, I'm like the Lakers can't give up those first round picks, and I'm also like the Lakers would still suck because they just do.
I have one team that I'll end with that I think really, really, really needs to make a trade. Like the one team that I need to see make a trade is Orlando Magic.
Hmm.
I It pays to be patient. It does. And I understand the patience that the Magic have had because look where they are now. They're one of the best teams in the league off defense alone because they are just bottom three. They've been bottom three in offense, and they've done that even when they've had Banker on the lineup. The shooting is still an issue. KCP has not fixed that, and they know the problem they have. I think they know their concept, they know their plan, and they know their deficiencies, and they have some extra pieces lying around. I mean, I love the idea of Anthony Black. I think he's a fascinating player. He's a big guard who can defend, play make, and be a secondary playmaker. You don't need to give him the ball if he can continue to develop his shot. But what can you get for him? Can you get a consistent 3-point shooter on the perimeter that can complement Franz Wagner and Paulo Banchero? Because in the long term, he's not the most important piece there. That's Jalen Suggs. I mean, Jalen Suggs is the most important tertiary guy next to those two wing playmakers. Can you get, like I was saying, a Zach LaVine? Can you get a Cam Johnson? And the Bulls seem happy to give the Magic all their good players, so I'm sure that will be fine.
Yeah.
Um, Talking about combining the Lakers and the Warriors, that's basically what the Bulls have done for the Magic for the last 4 years. But Zach LaVine, I mean, that's a big investment. Even a smaller investment, Cam Johnson. Bobby Marks suggested a trade that would send Cam Johnson, Keon Johnson to the Magic for Cole Anthony, Gary Harris, and first round picks. Be tough to get rid of the picks, but hey, you're in contention mode. I think you're on the cusp of contention mode. Can you unlock that roster with a little bit of shooting? Because it's god awful right now. I think if they really want to be serious about this season, because their young guys feel like it, their coach feels like it, the vibes in that arena feel like it, give them a chance. At least make a small move to get that offense
Yeah,
better.
like their pick should not be valuable for the next 5 years. Even like
Yeah.
as they stand right now, they should not, their pick should be of any value whatsoever. They should be consistently a top six team in the Eastern Conference. They should be consistently going on playoff runs. Obviously, we're still like Banchero is not the finished product yet. Neither is Wagner. Maybe neither is Suggs. So like they're still a young team, but they've got their core pieces.
Hmm.
So it's now is the time to invest and maybe be able to do it on a cheaper scale when it gets to the deadline rather than wait until the summertime.
Yeah. It's hard to make these deadline deals. Usually they don't happen for the best teams, but teams like the Magic, I think it's worth, reaching into your coffers, paying up a little bit, and seeing what happens.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And man, trade deadline just around the corner. I think about two weeks away. February 6th is the trade deadline, if I'm correct. I think it's about 2 weeks away from that. Stuff is going to happen. Like trades are going to go down. I know everyone's talking about the CBA. It's going to be so tough to see trades happen, but I think a lot of teams are in need. A lot of guys are on the selling block. So we're going to see some big trades go down, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But remember, we'll have it all covered for you here on Coast to Coast. But for now, that's going to do it. Chris, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you all so much for sticking with us. Timberwolves fans, what do you think of those trades? Do you think that those are viable? Let us know in the comments. But that's going to do it for today. Remember, we're everywhere on social media at Coast to Coast NBA. And most importantly, remember to take every shot and love every moment.
Peace out.